If you want to make things that make things better, have fun doing it, and learn to help yourself and everyone around you flourish, well, you've come to the right place. Welcome to Enliven. This is the show where we explore what's possible and the people, the principles, and the practices that are going to help you build enlivening products and enlivening organizations. I'm your host, Andrew Scottsko. And first of all, welcome to the podcast. In this first conversation, I had the pleasure of hanging out and introducing you to my friend May Lindstrom. I have to say, the story May shares in this conversation is deeply inspiring, and I found myself moved not just by the story, but by her clarity and her integrity as a leader. Starting from humble beginnings as a misfit in the Midwest, you'll hear how May made her way to California, overcame some extraordinary challenges, and has gone on to not just change the skincare industry, but to create a company that is adored by its customers for bringing love, connection, and restorative ritual back into their lives. What started for May as a deeply personal struggle with sensitive skin transformed into a passion for plant medicine and ultimately the 2012 launch of May Lindstrom Skin. Built around the core idea of delivering love and an intention to restore people's connection to their skin through the power of touch, May's formulas combine a total commitment to efficacy with a promise of unparalleled pleasure, and I think you'll hear why in this conversation. I have to say, I've actually had the pleasure of visiting May Lindstrom HQ here in Los Angeles, and you can actually just feel there's something different about the place. And in this conversation, May help me understand where that comes from. So without any further delay, please enjoy this inspiring conversation with May Lindstrom. Well, seriously, May, welcome to the show, and I'm so glad you're here. Thank you for taking the time.
Thank you.
It's really a pleasure. So where I wanted to start was you have all new team members read Charlie and the Chocolate Factory. And I was hoping you could tell me why you love that book so much and how did that get in there so deep for you?
Oh man, there's just magic in it. Have you read the book? Not the movie. Have you read the book? I
have. It's been a very long time.
All right. So you need to revisit and, find a good original copy because there's some really truncated, super kids book versions now that just aren't as good. You have to get the original, read it in paperback, eat some chocolate while you're reading it. Preferably some chocolate that has nice gold foil wrapping inside of it. Cause that's the magic. It's the idea of ritual is really, really deep in the company. Mm-hmm. And it starts with little things like this, where, Charlie, even as a child, once a year on his birthday would get a chocolate bar, and he was super poor. And so he would make that chocolate bar last forever, for weeks upon weeks upon weeks. And he would just crack open the paper and just let the sound of that be enough for the first day. Right? He didn't even touch the chocolate. And maybe 3 days in, he'd peel back the gold foil, and just seeing a flash of that gold foil, it's magic.
I love it.
And you're not even to the chocolate yet. So
how did you connect with that so deeply? Where did that, I love what you're saying, but I'm so curious, where did you encounter this story, and what was it about it that spoke to you so much?
This has come up over and over in my life, actually. I grew up really poor too. So we had some moments like that where there was these really special things. I just totally flashed back on, this is going to be way subject change. But when I first moved to LA, I was living in my car for the first year that I was out here, and, sleeping in the streets and living in my car. And at that time, there was no overnight women's shelters in LA.
Wow.
And because there was men's shelters, but the state didn't want to be liable for the safety of women overnight. And so there was day shelters where you could go and you could shower and you could get a change of clothes and you could have a meal and you could use a computer. And you could come twice a week and get a bag of groceries that had been donated. And so I would do that. And in the bottom of the grocery bag, you'd have this whole bag of canned potatoes and other, rejected shelf stable items of the world that end up in these places. And, so my dinner would be canned potatoes one night. And then the next night, the dinner would be mixed vegetables in a can. And then the next night would be, back to canned potatoes. But in the very bottom of that bag, there was a Butterfinger. Every time there was a Butterfinger in the bottom of the donated food bags. And I would do the same thing. I'd make that Butterfinger last all week until I got the new bag, because I can have a can of cold potatoes for dinner if I can finish it with a Butterfinger.
Wow. That is amazing. Okay, hold on.
So how does that relate to my company? Like, I sell luxury organic skincare, right?
Yeah.
But what we really do is we deliver Christmas in a bottle. We deliver love in a bottle. We provide a catalyst for magic in a bottle. And when you open our packages, I want it to feel like when Charlie peeled back the paper and revealed, this metallic gold foil wrapping up the most delicious piece of chocolate in the universe, and how much he appreciated it. And if you go on Instagram, like, there are so many people who will record their unboxing of our products with the same glee of that child. And it is, and it's magic. And I have people all the time who will say, I haven't even touched it yet. It's like, I got the package a week ago.
It's so beautiful. I'm just looking at it.
I can't touch it. And especially the Blue Cocoon is our number one selling product and my favorite product. And it's beautiful. It's this gorgeous blue balm. And it's kind of like having your own like personal lake in your hands. It's like you're holding the ocean in your hands. And people will open it and it's like, oh yeah, I'm not touching that. Wow. I'm going to mess it up.
Wow.
And so, they'll just look at it, they'll smell it. Like, and maybe a week or two later, they'll finally let their skin have some of it. But it's a special thing.
So many good things in here. We're going to come back to all this and the company a lot more. But I want to just go back really quick, because I'm just captivated right now by this image, the story you were telling me about when you moved to LA and you were living in your car. So take us back. When was this, and where did you move from, and what actually had you take that leap?
I grew up in northern Minnesota. I grew up about an hour outside of a town of 800 people.
Wow.
And down the road, one way was a town of 200 something people. Down the road, the other way was a town of 300 something people. So I grew up in a really, really small area. The nearest movie theater was an hour away in a town of 13,000 people.
Wow.
So little.
Yeah.
Little.
This is country.
Country. So country. I was born in a barn, which was our house. So I was born and raised my first years in a barn on 80 acres of forest and daisies in the middle of nowhere, northern Minnesota.
Wow.
So very intentional, back to the land, hippie parents.
Yeah. Did your parents, did they have a farm, or what was that situation?
We were very farm adjacent. We were surrounded by farms, but my parents weren't farmers. My dad was an electrician who later did only solar power. My mom is a healer, massage therapist, physical therapist, et cetera, body worker. So I grew up with this really deep appreciation of the land. And all of the surrounding families were all farmers. And so a great appreciation for what that means, what it means to grow. Everything that our people eat, was a big deal where I'm from. But I also grew up in a really very conservative area. So there was my parents and then a very little small community around them in this already infinitely small community.
Yeah.
And so I left that town just before I turned 16. I moved to Minneapolis and finished my last 2 years of high school in a program, an arts program there outside of Minneapolis. And the second I turned 18, I got in my car and took off, headed west. The goal was to go until I hit the ocean or ran out of money. I did both simultaneously, and
timing was perfect.
Therefore was 18 and homeless in my car in LA for a long time.
Wow. So so you're 16 and you're like, okay, I'm going to Minneapolis. And then did you already know it was a stepping stone to heading west? Or was it just like, this is the next step? How far out could you see at that time?
Well, I knew that I couldn't stay put.
How'd you know?
I didn't fit. I didn't fit.
Okay.
I got asked this in another interview, and I think what I said then was, I come from a small town, but I'm not a small woman.
Mm.
And I knew that there was a lot that I needed to do, and I wasn't going to be able to do it there. And being me, every element of me, who I am as a person, it was just tricky. It was tricky to be liberal, honestly. Even just that. Politically, it was tricky. I'm an artist. I'm a thinker. I'm not good at staying in a box. And there's just a way that things are done where I'm from. And it's not the way that I
That's not the way you
things.
wanted to do things.
And it wasn't the healthiest of places. My community where I'm from is very poor. There's a lot of drug use. The methamphetamine issue is really, really bad there. And that's what most of my friends were falling into. When you're kind of a creative outsider in a conservative community like that, that tends to be where you fall. You fall in with kind of the party kids. Yeah. And in my town, the party kids, they die.
Wow. Well, it was incredibly brave. Like, good for you for seeing, like, okay, you needed to take a step and set yourself up to pursue what you wanted to pursue. That's amazing. It's really, really cool. It's funny you mentioned you're an artist. I think you told me once that you don't do it too much anymore, but you like to paint. Is that something? Was that your art, or do you, when you think of yourself as an artist, how do you conceive of yourself as an artist? Tell me about that.
It's funny I said that, and I thought, wow, I haven't self-identified in that way in a long time.
Maybe it's coming back.
Yeah, I think it is. When I was younger, definitely, I loved to paint. And that was funny too. And is related to my world now, in that what I learned was I'm actually really allergic to paint, because I'm kind of allergic to a lot of stuff, glues and preservatives and formaldehyde and a lot of the things that are in paints. And so, which is largely what led to me becoming a formulator, because I was just reactive to everything, and I'd get all these crazy rashes and blisters, and my body would just freak out when exposed to anything. Mm-hmm. Yeah. And so ultimately I had to stop painting. And so I haven't painted in years, outside of, like watercolor here and there with my kids, which is pretty awesome.
Yeah.
But it's been a minute since I've sat down with intention to do my art. But it's manifested in many ways over the years, from cooking to formulation to painting to just playing in the dirt.
Yeah, just have a lot to express for sure. So it's interesting, because I find myself getting increasingly interested in art. Like, so I did not grow up in, that doesn't sound fair. I was going to say, I didn't grow up in an artistic environment. What I mean by that is nobody in my family was, especially into art. There were certain forms of art that that were like part of the family, right? Music, theater, things like that. But in terms of particularly visual arts, I had very little exposure on a personal level to that. And I find, as I'm getting, for whatever set of reasons, in the last several years, I'm finding myself getting more and more interested in it. And there's something that there's a phrase that I've heard a few people's reference, including our dear Seth Godin, which is we'll have to go to that story at some point of how we got connected in the first place. But I've heard Seth and others say that the job of the artist is to see, not to paint, not to sculpt, not to anything like that. What does that mean to you? What do you hear in that?
That's been coming up a lot lately. I've been exploring what it means to be a leader, particularly as my team has grown and my company has grown. And what I'm learning is I'm actually a really terrible people manager. I love people, not a good people manager.
Love the people, just not managing.
Love them. No, I'm not the person who's going to hold you accountable very well at all. Or even give you positive feedback, because I just assume that you know how much I love you. And so it's tricky for me navigating that one. And then going further down that line, I've also realized that I'm not even a great project manager. I'm a starter. I'm not a finisher. And so that's been something that I've realized. And then going back further from that, like what I am is an idea manager. And so it is my job to see. It is my job to hold the vision and to build the space in which we can make that vision into a reality. And that is actually my job. But what happens in the day to day is I get very buried in the logistics of what it means to run this company that is full of people and all of their hearts and complications and emotions and skills and challenges and, all the ups and downs of being human. And, so that's a sidetrack, but that's totally where I'm at with that. Like
no, it's
the art is, I think you're right. The art is the vision, and I can do that. That's when I feel the most free, is when I can just dream.
Yeah. I've heard a lot of people talk about that there's this almost like this space they can go to, where it's like sometimes they can just close their eyes and go to this space. And it's like they come alive in a new way that they sometimes struggle to, like any creative person, I think, has experienced it's like a bittersweet pain of like, you have this beautiful thing in your mind, and then you open your eyes and then you have to go deal with the reality of like making that thing real in the world, which is a reason that I think a lot of people probably never, they never put paint to canvas. They never do a formulation. They never start a pot, whatever. They never do the thing because they know on some deep level that it will never quite be as perfect as that vision in their mind. Do you experience that? And if you do, I'm curious, like, how do you deal with that? Because I know as you just said, you are this idea manager, this visionary, you hold these things in your head. How do you deal with that tension between the beautiful thing in your mind and then the perfectly imperfect reality as it's unfolding?
Well, I'm a good dreamer and I'm a good doer. And it's everything that happens in between that's really challenging for me. So when I was a one-man band, which I was for the first few years, no problem. No problem other than that I was by myself and it was the beginning. And then I had my first child and then I was doing it, with the child, and that was difficult. And, but kind of no problem. But now it's the straddling of all of these different universes. That's difficult for me, because I can dream it and I can do it. But if I have to delegate in between and then trust that you're going to do it, that's much harder for me.
Is it the letting go, or is it the following up?
It's all of it. It's that I haven't figured out how to fully hand off something, and to know that someone's going to pick it up with as much like gusto as I have. And sometimes they do, right?
Which is glorious.
Which is glorious. And you were talking about, the fear of like putting pen to paper, right? Because it's not going to come out the way you saw it in your head. And that's definitely true. Like I have these grand aspirations of like my ability to paint, but what I see in my head and what hits the paper are totally different things. And I might be satisfied with what ends up on the paper, but it will never look like what I imagined in my head.
Yeah.
With this company, it's a little bit different. When I first started working on the idea for May Lindstrom Skin, like it was just an idea. And I definitely dreamed way smaller than the reality of what is here today. I never knew that we would be here. And so this is the first time where what I imagined, the reality far exceeds what I thought I was building. And now is where I get to dream again. And to make space to dream again and go, well, shit, we made it this far. This is amazing. And it's kind of like a taking stock thing. And I'm sure I have this funny face on, on my head every time I enter the studio, because I feel like I walk in the door and every time I walk in, I like pause. I look around and I go, whoa, look at this. This is so cool. Look at these people.
Holy
who are these people? Yeah. And they show up every day and man, they give their whole selves to what they're doing. And there's so much love here and there's so much commitment to really doing what we do and doing it so well. And, I never knew that it could be this good. And I also know that this is the tip of the iceberg. And so there's I have to come to terms every time I walk in the door and go, oh, this is real and super cool. And all right, it's my responsibility to keep dreaming. Otherwise we stay here. And here is great, but there's just so much more potential.
Wow. There are so many amazing things inside what you just said that I want to double click into for a second. So first of all is, and I want to come back to this, but the type of environment you've created. So I've actually had the privilege of coming and getting to hang out at the studio there. You were gracious enough to host a few of us there one Sunday a few months ago, and I could feel it walking in, right? So I didn't, I don't know. I'm a guy who doesn't know anything about the beauty industry or skincare or any of this stuff. But I walked in and I went whoa. And I looked around and I was it was kind of almost like I was confused. And I was like, oh, there's something different in here. I don't know what it is, but there's something different. And so I think there's something really amazing that we should explore a little bit about. And I want to kind of really dive into this in a little bit is the environment that you guys have created there and how that happened, because I think it's something actually quite remarkable and really what we need a lot more of in the world. But the second thing that I think is so interesting, and we'll maybe start here and pivot to the environment thing, is you were saying that, it's really, you look around every day and it's amazing to you that this is real. And it's your job to keep dreaming again, because otherwise we'll stay here. And there's nothing wrong with staying here. And at the same time, you have that deep in your bones intuition of how much more there is available to be created, to be explored, to be discovered. And what I'm really curious about is that you're at this place that I think is so interesting for a lot of leaders, where they've achieved a level of success, as you said, beyond what they even thought, right? This is better. They're like, wow, I just never thought I would be here. And then there's the now what question. And at that point, there's this really tricky thing that seems to happen for some people, which is that it's almost like a unconscious self-sabotaging that can happen, where it's this is too good. And then things will just inexplicably start going awry, right? And you're not really sure why, but just stuff starts happening. And I'm curious, is that something you had to deal with? Is that something you deal with now? Or have you somehow managed to just dodge that bullet?
No, I've not dodged that bullet. This year has been an exercise of exploring my own shame around success, which I didn't know how much of that I had. I didn't know how much insecurity I had around particularly financial success. And I grew up really poor, really poor. My parents raised me on $7,000 a year for my entire childhood.
Wow.
And, when I moved out and lived in my car, it was well, no big deal. I'm eating canned corn. It's kind of not a big deal because I have a Butterfinger at the bottom of this.
I got a Butterfinger. I'm good.
So I didn't really know a different way for a long time. And so that, I don't have a scarcity mentality because I was always fine. But the opposite, this abundance place that we're in, I'm so lucky. I'm just so lucky to be where we're at. I have a roof over my head. I have a roof over my head. I have food every meal of the day on a normal schedule. I have 2 beautiful, healthy children. I have the most incredible husband who's my partner in every way. We just bought our dream house. And I have this incredible business. And there's a piece of me that's just waiting for the other shoe to drop all the time. And each of these little pieces has brought out some new element of shame in me where it's, I still don't tell my family how much revenue my company is making each year. I'll still downplay what we do in casual conversations with friends who don't know what we do.
Yeah.
And in many ways, that's just how I'm oriented. I'm not financially driven. When we talk about goals as a company, like revenue is never a part of it. No, we have this spoken goal, which is every day we're going to show up and do better than the day before. And that's not about, doubling our sales. That's not about, increasing our newsletter list by X amount. Like we don't do that. But every day we make a commitment to do better than before. And so, we get closer to the source on our ingredients over and over and over each time. And we've been sourcing the same ingredients, like identical from the beginning for a decade. But there's always a fresher harvest. There's always something interesting, happening on the planet where, this particular harvest is better than that one. And we're going to get it. And we're going to be first in line and we're going to get it fresh. And, we follow that through, from seed to bottle, to what happens in the customer's hands, to our follow-up customer service, to our engagement on social. Like it's so personal and it's so much about relationship and connection. And we just build on that every single day. And that's really where we measure where our success is. Mm-hmm. And so when there's these really tangible things, like last fall, we moved into our new work building. And that's where we manufacture all of our products and, store all our fresh ingredients and do all of our shipments and write all the handwritten notes that go out into the world with every box. Like that's where everything happens. All of the magic, my own little Willy Wonka chocolate factory, it all happens in here. And last year was monumental, because we moved into a building that we bought and built from the ground up, like including like water and electric and sewers and walls.
All the things.
All the things. We put all the things in there, and it was such an awesome process. And there was a part of me throughout the whole thing that was like, I don't know, like almost embarrassed that we were able to do that.
Yeah.
That we had come this far, that we were able to do that. And the idea that this year, like, not only did I somehow find my dream house, but I made it through like the battle rounds of fighting all of LA to, to win the bid, and then made it through, all the inspections and all the things. And now we're in renovations. Like I posted a teeny tiny little picture of it on Instagram this week. And it was the first time. And and we closed several months ago, and it was the first hint that I gave at it. And it was an exercise because I had shame around it.
Wow.
I was like, oh, what does it mean for me to have like this super pretty house? What will they think?
Wow.
Which is so funny because, on the other side, like my brand is beautiful and it's all about these beautiful things. And so sometimes there's this idea that I'm this really fancy lady in this fancy house in this, fancy life, and everything is just all sparkly. And it's very much the opposite of who I've been as a human and who I identify with as a human. And, but if you look at my Instagram, that's totally what you would think. And so now that I like have a house that could potentially actually match this perception, I'm not going to show it to you.
Wow. Well, first of all, thank you for sharing that. I really appreciate you sharing that with me. It's so interesting to me. And it's something I deal with as well in terms of, I don't know whether exactly it's shame or guilt or exactly the right word to use, but it's something I've noticed a lot. Like I spend most of my time in the world of technology, and my background's in engineering and product development. And one of the things that is rampant in that world, and I think it's rampant like just generally speaking, but I especially notice it in that world, is this sensation of, or this idea of like imposter syndrome, right? This idea of like, oh man, I'm just waiting for the other shoe to drop. I'm just waiting for them to figure out that, I don't know the answer to that question. And, or man, I don't know, I don't know. And having that humility, I feel like, and that vulnerability it's so scary in the beginning, but my experience has been so far that when I can get myself to, lean into it, to embrace it and like kind of let go of the control of trying to control how I show up, that I'm generally really like rewarded with the response. Like people are really authentic and generous, and I find that to be a really cool thing. So I'm curious if you've had a similar experience, or what the actual process. You said there's been so many things getting stirred up for you in the last year or two. What's that process like? Are they releasing? Are they letting go, or what's happening for you?
Oh, they are. It is letting go, but it's been a really active process. Well, first was just realizing that this was even something that was coming up for me. Like I knew that I was feeling uncomfortable, but I didn't understand why. Yeah. And when we were moving into, the new studio for May Lindstrom Skin last year, it was like, this is really exciting. And this is exciting for our audience too. Like it's just upping what we deliver. It's providing a safer, cleaner, like more efficient space for my team so we can do better work. And it's cool to see behind the scenes. Like people love being able to see what we do. And it's special because we do actually do it. There's no outsourcing here. Like everything is actually made here. This is not a marketing story. This is like, it's real. All of the ingredients.
Having been to the spot, I can attest to this. There is like the formulation kitchen, and then 30 feet away is like the shipping department, and it's all like little pods within the same space.
It's so cool. It's my favorite place to be, and I'm so proud of it. But yeah, I don't know what my deal was. I was just totally in my own way. And I think like I went through a similar thing. Cause I also got a nice car last year, which also I'm totally embarrassed to talk about. And I'm still getting over that one. But it's like, if you pull up to a valet, right, to park, and if you're in like an old, shitty, broken down car, you're embarrassed to pull up to a valet. Right? You're meeting some friends for dinner. They picked a fancy place. You're showing up in your shitty car.
Sure.
You're probably embarrassed. I wish I could find street parking. I can't. You're like apologetic to the valet guy.
I'm so sorry.
Right?
Here's take my shitty car key, please.
So I lived that world for so long. And then there was this middle piece that was brief. And now now I'm on this side where it's like, oh, wow, like I'm fine. Like I'm actually fine. I'm not in survival mode for, one of the only chapters of my life, it feels like. And so I can pull up in my car to a valet. I can walk into this building that houses my dream job and everybody in it. And this summer, I will be pulling up in my nice car to my nice house that I just can't believe is mine. Mm-hmm. And inside will be my husband, who looks like he was picked out of a, romance novel, and my children, who are ridiculously cute.
You do have a ridiculously photogenic family, I have to say.
It's true. I do. I think
like crazy photogenic.
Yeah. Yeah. It's all really weird, Andrew. It's all super weird for me. It's very weird. And I'm just really grateful. I'm so grateful. But I feel, I don't know, I feel like a kid.
It's beautiful.
I feel like a kid, and I'm just like, what am I doing here?
That's beautiful. Are you familiar with, curious, are you familiar with, what's his name? Simon Sinek at all? Does that ring a bell? Mm-hmm. So he has a book. Do you know the book he's coming out with in a few months? Mm-mm. So I feel like, I don't know. I feel like this book is going to be, I've personally been waiting for this book for like 2 years. And it's been delayed twice, which is killing me. Literally. I'm like, come on. But the book is called The Infinite Game.
Oh yeah.
Yeah.
Yes.
Are you familiar with the ideas there? Because like you were speaking the almost feel like you're like a case study in this book.
Uh-huh. There's a book that my husband references all the time, Finite and Infinite Games.
Mm-hmm. Yep.
Do you know that one?
Yeah.
Almost the same title.
Yeah. That was the one. That was the original work that Sinek, like they got Simon Sinek going on this thing.
Uh-huh.
He read that book and was like, there's something here.
Okay. Got it. So they're related.
Yeah. One
entangled.
So Simon, what's it called? Finite and Infinite Games, the one you were just referencing, is when I heard something about Simon Sinek's new book, I was like, okay, well, I love his work, so I'm going to go read this other book. And I have to say, it is difficult to read. It is super short, but I found it to be difficult. And I'm a voracious reader, but I could see the seed of what's there. But I have to admit, I'm very excited for a more palatable version.
Oh, I hear you. I did not read that book. I just listened to my husband talk about it a lot. I let him chew on the undigestible ones for me and
do the mastication and bring it over.
I'm totally happy to eat his leftovers.
That's awesome. So wait, I'm curious though. Like, do any of the ideas from that book that you've heard him talk about, do they resonate with you, or because I want to kind of shift gears a little bit here into talking a little bit about the environment you've created at the company, which I find to be pretty extraordinary. I'm basically someone who's obsessed with the intersection of work design or organizational culture and work environments and product development, and how you bring all that together to create these enlivening spaces and products for people. And when I visited your building and your company, I was like, oh wow, this is fantastic. I have got to learn more about this. So tell me about that. Like, how did it's possible that this fantastic environment you've created just happened by accident, but I think there was probably a little bit more intentionality to it. And I'm curious, when you look back over it, how did you get here as an environment?
How did I get here? Well, that's what I'm wondering every time I walk in the door and look around. Who are these people? I don't know, Andrew. It's not an accident. It's definitely not an accident. We've made some really intentional choices along the way.
What's an example?
A lot of it is, I put my head down. I put my head down and I do the work, and I operate from what do I think is the right thing to do, and not, what's going to generate the biggest return. What, do I need to do to please X, Y, and Z? We don't have investors. Our investors are our customers, which has been true from day one. We don't have a board of directors. We don't have anybody that I have to answer to except myself, my own conscience, my husband, now that he's a part of the team, and our customers. And so the guide rails are really clear and really clean. There's no other motive or anything else that I have to weigh in on. And so it's really easy to just be really honest about what it is that we want to make great in the world. And when the mission is really clear, we're technically a skincare company, but that is not what we do.
What do you do?
What we do, we bottle love. And that sounds, that can sound really cheesy, or it can sound kind of trite, but that is what we do. And if you step into this building and you watch my team work, it's very clear that that's what we do. And you see it. You see it from the team in shipping, how they handle the glass, lovingly shining each bottle, tying these satin ribbons on every box, slipping in the handwritten note. Our kitchen team, blending and filling each bottle by hand so carefully, measuring so precisely these ingredients that we've sourced from around the world, that we've spent years and years and years developing the relationships with the farmers, learning the grow seasons, understanding the potency and nutritional value of each of these ingredients and what they do for the skin on a total plant medicine level. There's so much magic in this. And if you spent a day with any member of our care team, that's our customer service crew, what we call the Care Bears. Like that's their job. Their job is to be like a Care Bear, like shooting light out of their belly buttons. That's what world. So, and they take it really seriously. And, you know, we get these emails, like just hundreds and hundreds of every week from clients all over the world who are asking us questions, and they're entrusting us not just with their largest and most vulnerable outward facing organ, but also with their hearts, with their vulnerability, with their stories. We are often the first to hear about people's engagements or their pregnancies or death in the family or somebody's cancer diagnosis, or, you know, coming to us following some difficult news or challenge, which is causing their whole body to freak out, which in result is creating these skin traumas. And we hear these stories, and our job is to hold our hearts open and keep that space for them. And in our ability to do that, we also have the opportunity to send them these beautiful presents that help them to love themselves a little bit more. And that's it. That is what we do. And as a result, their skin also looks beautiful and healthy and pretty and shiny, and the packaging is very Instagrammable, and everybody loves a good unboxing. And I get all of that, but that's, at the end of the day, we're a love company.
That's fantastic. I know for sure people listening to this are going to hear that come through like loud and clear in your voice, but since I actually can see you right now, it's so enrolling. Like, as someone who's a fan already of the company, even if I didn't know you already, I would be like, cool. How do I be a part of this thing? How do I help? I love it. And so one of the things I'm super curious about is, you know, I think what you just described is not only really beautiful and aspirational, but I'd love to get into like the tactics of how you constructed that a little bit more, right? How you built this bit, like, because I know it's taken 10 years of consistent effort, right? And as you said, you started on your own, and then like you had your baby, and then later down the line, it's grown bit by bit by bit, but it's been a 10-year overnight success, right?
Aren't they all,
right? So I'd love to hear a little bit about. So let's talk about the Care Bears, for example. So the Care Bears, how do you know? Like, I'm sure you have lots of people hitting you up, wanting a job, wanting to work at the company. How do you know when someone's a Care Bear? Like, how do you know the right person for the right role, and that they're a fit for the company?
Well, most people aren't Care Bears. And so when you meet a Care Bear, it's fairly clear.
Tell me, what are the signs of a Care Bear?
Would you know if you saw a unicorn?
I think I hope I would.
Well, I've gotten pretty good at identifying a Care Bear, but it might be a little bit of a magic trick. We hire for heart for sure. There's no doubt about that. For better or worse, sometimes that doesn't work out. But with the care team especially, that's vital. There are hard skills that you can teach, and there is, all kinds of training programs and tools to make somebody a more efficient worker at whatever particular skill we're trying to develop. But teaching somebody to really love, when your job is to hold space and to allow somebody on the other end to feel seen and heard from across an email, that is a skill set. That is an undeniable skill set. And man, that's a tough one. It's a hard one. And it's so valuable, because I really do think that that's the piece of our business that is truly extraordinary. When you send an email to us, it is received with love. And what we send back is sent with love. And everything that happens in the middle is relationship. We have clients who we email with, every week for years. It's not just, answering a single question like, hey, I'm pregnant. Can I use this? Yes, you can. That's not what the email looks like. It goes so much deeper than that.
Wow. So what is, man, I love this idea of, because, many people, I've met a lot of people in business who, let's say, are not quite as progressive as what you're describing. And one of the common reasons that I've heard people cite is that it takes too much time, or it's too expensive to provide this level of service for people. How do you think about that? Like, as someone who ultimately is an owner of the company and has to think about the whole thing, how do you think about that? Does that ever even play into your thinking, or is this just no? This is what we do.
No, what's expensive is dropping your values.
Tell me about that.
If we did not maintain these promises that we've made to ourselves, to each other, and to our clients, we'd fail. This company would not exist. There's no doubt in my mind that if we were following everyone else's playbook, we would never even have gotten off the ground, much less would we be soaring. It just wouldn't have happened. And so that is expensive. Metaphorically and literally, we just would not have taken off. And I am so grateful that we were able to do this slowly and with so much intention, where we really could take the profits out of, those first few orders to support the next few orders, to support the next few orders, rinse and repeat all down the line from day one until today without a single penny of outside money coming in.
It's amazing. It's an incredible story.
We are 100% funded by our customers. We are only accountable to our customers. And that has kept us so true. And it has helped us in so many ways with decision making, where if at any point I had to answer to anybody else about any of our crazy ideas, like that, some of our customer service emails will take the entire day to write.
Wow.
Because of what is contained in it, and not because it's, a year long, but because there might be really sensitive information in there. And when we buy X ingredient, we are many times paying 10x, 20x what other people pay by clicking a button on the wholesale internet supplies button.
Yep.
So that we can get it fresh from the source at the time of harvest from a totally respected, reputable farmer. And so that we can undergo all the testing that we need to verify that what we have purchased is what it says it is, and that it's safe, and that it's effective, and that it's going to actually deliver the result that we're looking for. So we do so much extra everywhere, that if I had to explain that to somebody whose money was tied up in the company and explain to them why it is that we are growing slow on purpose, I don't know. I can't imagine those conversations going that well.
That doesn't sound that fun.
It might be fun for me. I've gotten pretty good at these kinds of conversations. And they happen sometimes. I've had a number of pretty heavy conversations with retail partners. And I've probably gotten a little bit of a reputation for standing up around that. Retail is very difficult for brands like ours, particularly with fresh made products that need to be used. We invest so much into getting these ingredients fresh and then making everything so efficiently and beautifully at our studio. Every bottle leaves with a birthday stamped on the bottom of the bottle. Every single one. It's so cool. Like, if you pick up a jar of the Blue Cocoon today, it's going to say that it's August, and it's August. And when it ships, it's probably still August, maybe September. And I ask the same of our retail partners. We didn't pay 10x. Our mutual customer didn't pay 10x for this product to sit on the shelf.
Mm-hmm. So you have to stand up for the product to actually get the delivery to the customer that it deserves.
Exactly. And I I like to think of our retailers as an extension of our family. And I've learned that that's a little romantic of me. And so that is an aspiration that I'm still aiming for. But I do at least need them to be teammates, and I need them to be on our same team, because I'm on the team of our customer. And so I need them to be on the team of the customer too. And unfortunately, they do have investors to answer to. They do have lots and lots and lots of other brands that they manage. They have other agendas. I've got one. I deliver love. So for me, it continually comes back to that. And does this do that?
Mm-hmm. That's a great North Star.
It's a very clear one.
Yeah. Man, this is so great. I would love to hear if there's an example you could unpack a little bit about how you went through this process. Because I imagine that, some of the people listening to this are, they are also diehard advocates for something they've created or been a part of creating, right? They believe in it deeply. They're on the team of their customer. They are out to make a meaningful, specific contribution to people. And they are encountering some form of resistance, their own version of the retail timing issue that you've had to deal with. How would you, could you walk us through how you've successfully resolved this in the past, and then maybe also where it didn't work, and what emerged from that someone listening to this could actually apply to their own situation?
Well, I'll keep with that example because it's a relevant one that we continue to work with. Twice in the last 5 years, we've let go of our number one retail partner.
Wow.
These were different retail partners, but it was the new number one. So for context, we have around 50 retail partners throughout the world at this time.
Okay.
And most of today's business, which is awesome, comes directly through maylindstrom.com.
Okay, so most of it's direct to customer.
So most of it's direct to customer, which I'm really proud of because our direct experience is really where you get the best of us. And that's when I get to send you Christmas. That's when you get to intercept and interact with our Care Bears and with our magical shipping team and really get our product, fresh from the source, right from us.
Well, it's also great because it's more margin into the company that you can turn around to help do even more.
Totally. So it's the most powerful piece of our business, but we do still have a really strong retail family as well. And most of them are fantastic, and I'm proud to have them in our retail family. But there's challenges with it. And of those 50 or so currently, it was around the same number a couple years back. And twice in our history, the number one slot, the highest revenue achievers of all of them, who were doing kick-ass sales, really just crushing it everywhere. Big advocates for the brand. Their customers were buying. Not a problem of stagnation on the shelves at all. But they don't rotate inventory. Nobody follows first in, first out practices. And these are fresh made products. You have to treat them the same as you would treat any other fresh made food. This is food for your skin. It's the same thing. And so it's not about it going bad on the shelf. It's what you've invested in. So the difference, you can walk into a Walgreens now and find shea butter on the shelf for, a few dollars for a big jumbo jar. But that shea butter is not the same thing as the shea butter that I get. That shea butter is years old before it's even hit that shelf. And it's super processed and bleached and deodorized and lacking all of the good stuff. And so this is true across the board for ingredients. So what our customers are investing in, why our price point is where it is because of what we've invested in on the ingredients front and what we've done to take care of our team internally with healthcare, with best practices, really creating a good, safe working environment, to the customer service experience, which I really deeply believe in. And so you're investing in all of these things. And I need that from our retailers too. And a big part of that comes from managing inventory, which sounds like really dry, But it's so important. If you went to the grocery store and there was milk on the on the shelf that was a year old, it would freak you out. And there's systems around it to make sure that doesn't happen. So in a grocery store, you load from the back. And sometimes if you're walking by the dairy section, you can see this happening. You'll see little hands poking through, like behind the wall where the milk is all lined up, and you can see them pushing the older units forward and putting new into the back. So if you're savvy, you probably reach towards the back for your milk, but most people will grab from the front, and the system works because of that, because you're continually turning over. And so what I'm asking of our retail partners is that they treat us like milk. When new product comes in, it has to go to the back, and the older units need to push forward. And those older units are not old. I'm asking you to buy just a handful of weeks of cover when most retailers want to buy for several months up to multiple years of product, which is crazy. Mm. And so when the system works, it's beautiful, and often we break everything. Last year, we went into Space NK in the UK, and I had said no to them repeatedly because I'd been in and out of big stores like that. I'd been in and out of Barney's. Mm-hmm. I've pulled myself from most of Neiman Marcus. Like, we've done that and seen the challenges with managing inventory. So it's not about product not moving because it's not selling. It's about those first units in the front being sold over and over and over, and the ones in the back dying. And to me, that's unacceptable. Mm-hmm. But I've watched Space NK bring us in, go, wow, we are totally not doing this right at all. Mm-hmm. I don't know if we can do this properly. We might not be able to. Let's see if we can work it out. And they were so honest with me about what the challenges would be, because I was equally honest with them that I didn't think they could do it.
Way to lay down a challenge, though.
we really took it seriously to approach it as directly as possible and work through that. And they're still working out inventory issues, but they're very dedicated to getting it right. And if they get it right, this is going to be a really fantastically successful partnership. We're just under a year in. They're working really hard at it. There's still some bumps, but they're committed to it. So I would say that is a version of this being successful, along with most of the partners that I have that are being successful. Otherwise, they wouldn't be active. But the flip side is those two retailers who were our number one, who I let go. And both of those cases were, I really thought would be devastating. I was very scared. One of them was just a year and a half or 2 years or so ago, and the other was a year or two before that. And the first time, we were a much smaller company, and this was a very big account, and they totally crushed our other sales.
What percentage of the business are we talking about here?
At that time, it was that one, the first time that I let go, our number one, it was probably a quarter of our business.
Wow.
They did way more than all of our other retailers put together in their first handful of months with us. Had we stayed with them, they would have been, many multiples over any other retail partner. And at this time, our retail makeup was much larger than our direct sales. In the years since then, our direct business has grown exceptionally and would have surpassed that. But at that time, it was massive. And when we would do our freshness checks, it was the same year that we started putting these birth dates on the boxes. It was like the canary in the coal mine. It was like we put the birth dates on the bottles, and it told us so much more than what was happening with inventory management, because what it did was made our products trackable. And so when the birth dates went on there, we could then follow up and have manual inventory checks quarterly, and we could see what's moved, what hasn't moved. So we'd see what products are sitting, where the education gaps are. Was their team excited about these products or not excited about them? Were people just buying the top sellers? why or why not. But there was so much more that we could learn.
Yeah.
And in this particular case, what we learned was, that the demand in this particular country was really, really high for our brand, but that they were absolutely clueless about inventory management. And so they were selling like crazy, but always only the new stuff, and the old stuff would sit for forever. There was no management whatsoever of merchandising and inventory. And I made the decision to cut the account.
Wow.
Because it started to feel painful. I was having a very personal response to it, where it felt like any client who came to their store and made a purchase with them, and that was the first introduction to our brand, it was worse than if they didn't know about us at all.
Ouch.
And which was tough because they were selling so much. I knew that there was a lot of that happening, and I felt like every sale was like a sting. And I felt it. And I'm a very feeling person. I'm a very emotional person, and I take this so personally. And it really did feel personal. It felt like I was lying. I felt like every bottle sold was me breaking a promise.
Wow.
And it was a promise that I felt so firmly was the right way to do business and the right way to build this industry. I'm watching so many other brands come up in this natural beauty space that are new since I've been here. And there are brands who look to me. It's my job to do right for our customer. And it's also my job to do right for this community and for the beauty industry as a whole, which needs a lot of revision and a lot of shakeup. And if I can't be accountable for my own product, how is any of this ever going to change? You have to make the hard decisions.
I so love everything you just said, and I really respect and acknowledge the honestly the guts it takes to actually live your values like that. Because values are one of those things that we all know how important they are, but they at the same time, most people have. We've all seen the stupid posters on the wall of like the terrible corporate motivation posters and things like that, but I'm curious, have you, as the company's grown, you clearly as a founder and a leader of a company, you have such a strong internal compass for what the right thing to do is and for how to make these decisions. And, one of the things that I always think about when it comes to, that some mentors have taught me over the years, when it comes to like leadership and growing an organization is that, how do you scale an organization? How do you scale leadership? And so much of it is, training people, like teaching someone to think, not teaching them how to do, but teaching them how to think the way you would think. So you can go do something else and they would show up just like you would show up. And what I'm really curious about is what steps have you taken to kind of externalize these values, right? Like you have this internal compass. How do you teach your team about that? And specifically, like when I think about values, my personal opinion and bias here is that anyone can say a value like integrity, right? Or honesty. These wonderful sounding words, we know how important these concepts are, but I think where most value exercises, to put air quotes around it, break down is that they never tell people what it looks like in action. Like what is what does this value, like when we say this word, we mean it looks like this in your day-to-day life. And I'm really curious, if you guys if in your experience, you've had anything like that as you've grown the company and as you've started to transmit these values in this way of thinking about business and operating not just a company, but really like living an ethos.
There's a lot of that. It really just, I think, comes from observation. I'm such an open book about everything that's going on. And so my team has gotten to see me really process all of these things. When we let go of our first number one retailer, for example, the team had been so excited to have an account that was this big. They had seen me through the onboarding process. Well, first they saw me through the contract process, which was very lengthy and complicated, which I also learned if you're having a lengthy, complicated contract process, it's probably not going to go that well from there.
Probably not a great sign.
So I've learned a few things. But they watched me go through that, through all the legal stuff to get set up with this account. And then they watched us launch, and nobody really had any idea how big this would be. And then it was really big. And so everybody got to like get really geared up, and, you know, we moved from like working at like a 3 or a 4, like pretty chill, to like, whoa, we're working at an 11. And that was really exciting. And I think was inspiring to everybody to see, you know, it felt like we were at the tip of the iceberg, and this really proved that we were, because this was just one account. And overnight it was a massive change in what we were doing. And I think that got everybody really fired up. So there was all this energy around this new retailer, and everybody was so excited, and there was such like good happening on our side that when we'd been with them long enough for us to start doing these freshness checks and seeing the red flags, it was a bummer. And it was, you know, a little like a shock to the system. It was like, oh, you know, like it was falling. Yeah, it shattered that a little bit. And then we worked so hard to try and correct that, because it was a relatively new thing for us. These birthdays on the bottles were new that year. And so we hadn't had much experience in what does it mean to really support our retailer in this too. We're asking them to break the box. And so I can't just ask you to change everything about how you've managed inventory through all history overnight and expect you to succeed. And so I really took it seriously to give my best effort too, and to be as supportive and give the best tools. And we bought back so much product in order to be in support of this effort together. But it wasn't met. It wasn't met, and the communication wasn't great, and they weren't as gung-ho about our belief system as we were. And I really do need that from our partners. You can't share our story if you don't believe in our story.
What does someone need to believe to be the right partner for you?
Well, that our customer is worth it. Like it's so simple when it comes back to that. Our customer is worth it. Our job is to deliver love. Our job is to hold that space and make sure that they feel seen and heard. And there was nothing in, oh, it's totally okay to sell you this product that's 2 years old, that rang true in any of that.
Yeah.
What that says to me is you don't think that the customer is worth it, that you think that, you know, saving that sale is more important. It says, I don't hear you, and that you are trying to invest in a brand that's known for fresh ingredients. I don't see you coming to me and entrusting me with your skin and with your financial investment. It's saying, I don't give a shit about you. It's saying, I'm running a business, and this is how I'm running a business, and it's about the bottom line. And that just hurts my heart.
Yeah. So have you evolved any ways of telling in advance? Like, are there any things you notice now early in the conversations with a potential partner that, you know, you can actually pick up on and say, this is a little thing that maybe you missed in the past, but now you notice it and you know it's not going to work?
Sure. Yeah. Anyone who says, oh yeah, that's not going to be a problem at all. Anyone who goes, oh, totally. Of course we rotate our products. Of course. Anyone who's too sure that they've got it, they don't. They absolutely do not. It's a good sign for me when people go, you know, I think that we're doing that, but let me check on that and find out exactly what we're doing, and I'll get back to you. Because that's at least on the right track.
And it seems like there's a level of humility and openness there, and at least a willingness to look at what they're doing is maybe what's behind that, right? It's like saying, I'm not going to sit here and just state that everything we're doing is, of course, it's perfect, right? But
sure.
It's
a sales thing. And it's kind of like a first date. Like when we receive an inquiry from a new retailer and they're trying to sell themselves, they're going to tell us how excellent their customer service is. They're going to tell us how beautiful their packaging is. They're going to tell us that our customers are in good hands. And we're going to want to believe them because they also started a business, hopefully based on caring about something. And I am such a sucker. You send me a nice email and I am just a wide open heart. So it's really hard for me, but there are a few things that we ask, and 99 times out of 100, if you're like, oh yeah, totally, we're great at that.
Usually not.
You're not. You're not. And I'm okay with you not being good at it, or even saying, we've never done that before. How do we do it?
Mm-hmm.
That's okay. I will meet you where you are, but I have to know where you are to meet you there.
Mm. Yeah, absolutely. Absolutely. It reminds me of a story I think you mentioned when I got a chance to visit the company. And this just, I think, is another thing that would speak to sort of the very intentional way that I think you run the company. You mentioned, tell me the story about the product recall.
So that's a juicy one. Yeah. Well, my promise is to get it right. And there was a day when we didn't get it right. What we learned was this product, the Honey Mud, which was our number 2 bestseller. We'd sold, hundreds of thousands of units over a course of several years, and always been totally stable, solid formula. Great. Like never a complaint. This is a universal. Everybody loves this product. Everybody loves this. There was no like, oh, these ones are great, but the Honey Mud, not so much. No, everybody loves that one.
Pie. Everybody loves this thing.
It was a surefire win, and it was a great introductory product for that reason. It was how a lot of people came to be introduced to the line. So it was definitely a good gateway drug. So very established product. And then we started getting emails from a handful of clients who were experiencing mold in their jars. And at first, it just seemed like a really freak thing because we undergo testing. We sell in the EU. There are so many things that we have to do to make sure that not only, do our formulas look good and smell good and make our skin feel good, but that they're safe and that they're stable and that they're going to remain stable. Not just for the amount of time in which I want you to use them, which is as quickly as possible so that they are fresh and potent and full of nutrition, but also they are designed to be shelf stable for a long time, much longer than I want it to take for you to use it. So I got these emails and we started tracing batches, which is great because we track everything. And so we could look back and we could say, all right, well, the challenge with naturals is we use fresh ingredients. And that means with every single ingredient, there's a new batch. There's a new harvest. So, I can be importing, rose powder, for example, a new harvest every handful of months for years, but it's not going to be the same this month as it was 6 months ago or 6 years ago because it comes from a different literal flower.
Literally different plant.
Right? It's literally a different plant. So it's technically the same genus species, not the same thing. And that's true across the board. And so with every single micro batch that we make, there is something new. We're not changing the recipe. We're not changing the formula, but it's inherently new every time. And so when this started happening, it was all the same batch. And so we went, okay, what in here has changed since the time before, or what's showing up differently. And we thought we had it pinpointed to a batch of honey. And so we started testing our honey, and honey is also inherently alive. And ours is raw so that it retains all the good enzymes and, life activity in it, which is the point. You don't want to heat your honey and kill all the good stuff. But that comes with challenges, because how much life is too much life?
You tell me, May.
Well, that's what we had to learn, is where is this threshold for what is too active? And historically, we'd apparently been under that baseline. And then one day we weren't. And so we thought it was the honey, but we weren't really 100% sure, because you can't be 100% sure until everything you can retest, but then that takes incubation time. But because the activity that's testable in honey was showing high for the remaining honey that we had from that batch, that we were able to test that honey, and those numbers came back high, we thought we'd solved the problem. And so we said, all right, well, it's limited to these.
Swap them out, get new ones.
That's really unfortunate, but this should be a weird, fluky, one-off thing. And went back to normal. And it was months until it happened again. But then it happened again. And when we saw that it was happening again, we pulled it, because I didn't have the answer, because I had thought that I had the answer, and I was wrong.
So what happened then?
I sent a really fun email to thousands and thousands of people that said, hey, something's not right, and I'm not going to sell you the honey mud until I can make it right. And I don't know what the answer is, but I'm going to find out. And when I do, this will be back better than ever. But in the meantime, don't use your honey mud, because there is a chance that it could go wrong. And wrong is relative, right? It's like going to the grocery store, you buy a loaf of bread, and that particular loaf gets mold on it earlier than you would expect. It's not a reason to never buy bread again or to ever eat bread again. You don't totally distrust bread now because you had a piece of bread with mold on it. But it should not happen in skincare. It should not have happened in this formula. We are very careful. This was a formula that has been proven stable for years and years and years. And this was a really unfortunate episode.
Yeah. So what happened after the email? Did you do a recall, or what was the next step?
Yeah. So because we did a cease of sales, which is not a formal term. But that's what I called it. We stopped selling it. We told all of our retailers to stop selling it. We bought back any remaining units from our retailers. Anyone who wanted a refund got one. Anyone who, still today, and it's been several months since then, but if somebody emails us and they just found out, I'm giving them a refund, or I'm sending them another product, or we're going to make it right. So for people who did make this investment, I'm deeply committed to making sure that we do good by them. And for our retail partners too, who also invested in the product that became unsellable or that resulted in returns. That's a big hit for everybody. But there was only one way to do that. There wasn't a more official recall. This was not like an FDA generated thing. This was a morals thing.
An ethically driven
for me.
Thing.
It was totally an ethically driven thing. And, my husband and I just, when these emails, the second round of them showed up, we just stayed up one night and went, all right, so there's clearly only one thing to do here. So what are we going to do? And that night we sent an email both to our direct audience and to our retail partners so that they were in sync together with hearing this decision. And it was funny because I definitely held my breath sending that. It was very scary. We're still a small business. there's a lot of distrust in the natural sector of beauty, around safety, around formulation, and for good reason. And it's also our number 2 product. Financially, we really do count on every sale. That's part of our customers, our investors. We need our customers to be a sustainable business. And so I knew when I sent that email that there was a chance that it could take us under. I also knew that there was absolutely no other right call to make. If even one person receives a product that's not the best of us, I did not do my job. So for me, that was the only action to take. And then there was a sense of relief. I was very anxious to send it. But then an overwhelmingly responsive? Is that
it is now. I like it.
An overwhelmingly positive response from our audience. We received so much love and support for having done that, which was funny too, because even our retailers were surprised. And I was surprised by their surprise because it seemed so obvious. But it was interesting how many stories were shared with me of other brands who'd had products go bad or have issues come up in formulas where it was never talked about, where it wasn't a public topic, where it wasn't something that ever got expressed in a newsletter or a social blast of any kind. It's not something that founders talk about or formulators talk about ever publicly. You might hear about a recall if it was FDA mandated, but like a little bit, and then it's buried on those brands' website. There's no mention of it anywhere. You can't find it. And I asked a couple of my retailers, like, well, when that happens, when somebody does pull a product and bring it back with a new formula, what does that look like? And they said, we'll get a product and it'll have mold in it or something, and maybe they'll replace it or maybe they won't. And maybe they change the formula and maybe they won't. But it's not something that's talked about at all.
So it's all just hush hush, pretend it's not there.
Total hush hush. And this is no different to me than anything else that I've stood for. And so for me talking about it just seemed so obviously the right thing to do. The same as standing up and like really starting a fight about proper inventory management. These things go hand in hand. And so as much as I'm like the girl on the mission for what it means to really manage fresh made beauty products, in the industry as a whole, I guess I'm also now the poster girl for, just do it right. And if you make a mistake or run into a challenge, I'm working with nature, and nature is wild. And I remember that every time. There's something so sacred about the work that I'm doing. It feels like to me, and I feel like I have a real responsibility to get it right. But I can't get it right every time. Nature is my boss, and she's a little unwieldy.
Has a mind of her own, huh?
Yeah. But it's my job to keep trying, and I'm reworking the formula, not just to solve this, one particular moment, but to prevent against it in the future. Because what I've learned is that there was a possibility for this to happen. And prior to this happening, we had years of history telling us that there was no possibility of this.
Wow. So is this so what is the story finished yet, or is the story still in flight? Are you still investigating the?
Oh, still in flight. Yeah, I still don't know fully why that happened. And I'm learning that I don't have to know fully why it happened to understand that I need to do something to make it sure it never happens again. And so I'm just approaching this differently. And what it's making is for a much more interesting formula. It's allowed me to be creative. It's allowed me to really think outside the box because I'm deeply committed to natural. But I'm also deeply committed to making sure that every customer ever always has the best experience of us. And this wasn't it. So when the honey mud comes back, which it will truly be better than ever. And I'm really excited for that. And the emails that we still get every single day with people asking when it's coming back. That was the kind of coolest surprise. I really thought there would be, I don't know, some big backlash.
It seems like it's the opposite.
And there wasn't. There was just so much love. And there was so many people who were just like, well, I'm just heartbroken that I'm not going to get to have it for a while. And that was the most rewarding thing that I could possibly hear because it was really scary. It was the right thing to do. And it was also really scary. And knowing that everyone who has brought us to where we are today is going to still be here with us tomorrow, and that I get to keep showing up and my team gets to keep showing up and doing what we do best across the board, not just for the honey mud, but for the full collection and for this full mission that we have, that we get to keep doing our jobs is just so huge. And I just have so much gratitude for that. So the honey mud will be back. I'm hoping end of this year, early next, but this is not something I'm going to rush. Testing takes time. Incubation periods literally take time. They're timed tests. Like I cannot speed up a 3-month test. It's a 3-month test. And if there are tweaks that happen following that 3-month test, well, there it goes again, another 3-month test. So that's just where we are. And so it's been a really big lesson in patience for me, but I am far more committed to getting it right than I am to getting it quickly. And that's how I'm wired.
No, I love it. And, I think what really stands out to me, there's so many really great things that jump out to me about that story. But I'm just so, you're such a great example of someone who's actually making the hard calls and not doing the easy thing and taking the risks, right? Like, let's look at 3 different things that have come up in this conversation, right? Twice you fired your number 1 vendor. And then you've had to stop selling your number 2 product, which represented, I'm guessing, a pretty substantial percentage of your revenue at the time of your direct business, right?
Yeah.
Like three concrete examples of you making a really, what I think for a lot of people would be a really tough call. Like that for an entrepreneur, that is a hard call to say, I'm going to walk away from a whole bunch of revenue that my company depends on. And what I'm so curious about is, what do you think it is that enables you to make those calls that sometimes other people wouldn't have made?
Well, it's that baseline that we talked about. When the question comes back to what would the customer want? Does this deliver it? There's no maybe in here. There's no gray area. There's no middle of the line. That answer is super clear. So you can play dumb and act like you don't know the right thing to do, but you know the right thing to do. And if there were other options on the table, if we had a different baseline, if we had a different, North Star, it would be very easy to make a different call on any of the things that I make a call on. But I don't. I have one very clear North Star. So there's no decision making. Where the decision's made. My job is to then just act on the decision that's already made. Mm-hmm. I think that's been part of the saving grace, actually, is I don't know what other people do. I don't know what they do. I don't know how they do it. And I think that there's been a lot of times over the years where having some insight into some other people's processes probably could have helped us to be more efficient, to, move a little quicker, to grow a little faster, just in terms of equipment and technology, for sure. There's so many things that if we weren't just forcing, brute strengthening our way, would have been very different. But for as many benefits that could come from that, there's a cost. And for me, the distraction of going, oh, they're doing it like that. That's super expensive to me, because then I get into comparison mode. I get competitive. I get like all these things that aren't naturally that much a part of who I am as a human. And in business especially, I need to stay focused, because if I'm thinking about all of that, then I start being fearful. And if I'm operating from fear, I can't have my Northern Star be love if I'm operating from fear. You can't do love from fear.
It's so obvious, but like, as you said, I'm like, yep, there you go.
Like, you can do, my job is to increase revenue by 80% from fear. Sure, you can rally behind that in all kinds of fearful ways, but like, that's not my North Star.
Yeah.
So, like the entire company is built around some very out of the box kind of what defines our success.
When what you're doing is so stable, right? Like, you've been on this mission for 10 years. What I'd be afraid of is I'd be afraid of getting bored, right? That like, and what I'm curious about is like, what's that like for you? Because clearly you're not bored. What is it that keeps it like motivating, challenging, stimulating, interesting for you?
Well, Andrew, once you think you've got it all figured out, you're going to have to fire your number one retailer and then do that again. And then this thing that you thought you really had figured out, that's like making you millions of dollars, you're going to have to pull it and explain it. And and then you're probably going to outgrow your space. You'll have to buy a new building and build it. That's a whole new. You ever been a contractor for like building a commercial zone So no, like in theory, I'm doing the same thing I was doing 10 years ago, but I am not. And it's like, trying to catch snowflakes or something. Like, you just can't, you can't catch one and hold it, much less like all of them that's coming. So, I never would have thought, really, like, I thought that this was going to be something that I did like on the side while like my new baby napped, because I thought she would. And I thought that would be enough. So that it turned into this whole other thing. And I'm responsible for all these people, like both my own people internally, but all the retailers that we affect, and like the thousands and thousands of customers that we have that are trusting me to show up and do my job. There's like not a way to be bored. There's too much to do. And so it's more just like, it happened and you look up and you go, oh, it's been 10 years. Whoa, how'd that happen? That was quick. And it was slow. And in that 10-year period, like, I met my husband, I had 2 kids, like my whole life changed. When I started working on this company, I was 25 years old. I'm 36. I had no idea where I would be in any of those things. If you had told 25-year-old me with this idea, living in like my ex-boyfriend's super shitty apartment, like being like kind of depressed and pretty clueless, and like at the end of my rope from all the other random jobs that I was doing. Hey, just look 11 years into the future and imagine your own Willy Wonka factory with like super cute husband and like the sweetest kids you've ever seen, and like your dream house, financial flexibility, everyone's healthy, everyone's fed. Oh, and all of your employees get like not only fair pay and benefits, and they also get like massages twice a month and like a bunch of really over the top stuff that's totally unnecessary but awesome. That's going to be your life in 11 years. It would have been unbelievable. It's unbelievable now. So certainly my 25-year-old self had no clue.
Thank you. No, this is really, I'm so glad I asked that question because this is exactly the kind of thing I need to hear because I'm like, I can see I can see that this has been like something holding me back in my life. And so I really appreciate hearing that because I'm like, okay, I know that's a fucked up piece of psychology that isn't serving me. And I don't know exactly where it came from. I don't really care. I just want to handle it.
Yeah. No, it's one step at a time, right? Like if you're going to climb a mountain, you can't go, I'm going to climb that mountain. You go, I'm going to take that step. Did it. I'm going to take that step. Did it. And then all of a sudden, you're at the top of the mountain and you're looking around, you're going, whoa, how'd I get up here? Like when I walk into the studio, it's me standing on the top of the mountain going, wait, I thought I just put my shoes on. Like, what do you mean I'm at the top of the mountain? Like, I don't get how this happened. And you can't, like, I don't think you can plan for that. Like, I've never had a business plan.
Yeah, no, it's interesting because like the climbing the mountain thing, I feel like as somebody creative and entrepreneurial, I live in the tension between the mountaintop and the step. So I used to think that my job as a leader was to be like really good at stuff. Then I thought my job as a leader was to know all the things. Right? I said, okay, well, if my job isn't to like do all the things, then surely my job is to like have the answers. Right? Like I'm supposed to be the guy who you have the question, I have the answer. Like I'm really good at doing that. And then I discovered, holy shit, that's not my job either. So then I was at this place where I'm like, well, fuck, if my job isn't to do the things, if my job isn't to know the answers, what's my job? Mm-hmm. And it was like a thing for me for a while.
Am I relevant? Yeah.
My job wasn't to do all the things, but it was to ensure that like the right things got done. It wasn't to know it wasn't to know all the answers to the questions, but it was to make sure the right questions got asked. And then it was like, okay, so what is it that I'm really supposed to be doing? And the answer I've come to so far was to hold the vision while it was being fulfilled. To keep it alive, to keep it present, to keep it real while we're on the journey. So to like keep the mountaintop present, even on step 2.
Yeah. So that's like, I could have said those same words verbatim, which has been like the learning of like, my job is not to manage the people or even the projects. It is to manage the idea. Yeah. And I think that that's like essentially the same idea, but yeah, that's a challenging one. And then the other part of that, the imagining the mountaintop thing, that's a great piece. But if at 25, I had set my mountaintop vision, I would have undershot.
Right. Because you're right. You could imagine one mountaintop. And this is why a lot of really ambitious and successful people get super depressed, right? Like they hit the mountaintop, they get it. And then what? Right. And then they either can't think of a new thing that's exciting to them, or usually they can't think of anything that's exciting to them as this thing they've built up for decades, maybe. Right. And then that's a really hard switch from chasing an end to pursuing a path.
Yeah.
And I think it's a tough switch for people.
Well, and also getting to that mountaintop and going, this isn't that exciting.
You're like, shit, is this it?
Like, I got here and so what? Yeah, you can't make your end. You can't envision your end. That's weird. That's where you're going to die.
Yeah.
Like, if you don't have anything happening after you reach that mountain, like, really, that's a weird thing to have projected for yourself. And also, what if you're thinking small and that mountain is like super not actually your thing? I think, like, find something that serves you today and then do that again tomorrow and then do that again the next day without so much thinking about what the future has to look like. Because it doesn't matter what you think the future is going to look like. It won't. Like, when have you ever predicted your future accurately?
Almost never.
Right. So, like, why do we spend all this time
trying to predict the future?
Trying to predict it? No, like, and that's not saying like, don't have goals or like aspirations or allow the vision of like this thing you really want. That's good. That's a good energy to foster. But like getting caught up on like exactly what it's supposed to look like and when it's supposed to happen, like again, like you might totally undershoot doing that too.
Yeah.
Because, we have a tendency to do that.
You're tolerant.
Like, oh man, I'm never even going to get that. Like, I'm never going to make it to the top of the mountain. Well, it turns out you could easily make it to the top of the mountain, and you could probably get there 10 times faster than you think that you're going to. And it's going to be like way more fun along the way, potentially, if you don't think that that's the end all be all. But like, if you think that that is the unachievable thing, you're right.
Yeah, you're right. It's like if I make that thing so significant and like it's the end all be all, it's everything, then that's exactly what it'll be. But if I just allow it to be part of the path, then and it can be a great part of the path, but still part of the path. Yeah. Right.
And you might, spend 5 years getting to the top of that mountain. And it turns out you're a 5-minute walk down that path to the most beautiful crystal pool right next to it that you didn't even know was there. That's like full of like deer and bunny rabbits and shooting stars and like all the magic. And you just were like, I'm getting to the top of the mountain. It's like, no. 5 feet to the left is like the best thing you've ever seen. The thing that you never would have thought to imagine. Who knew that you wanted sparkling pool and bunny rabbits and deer? Like, who knew? Yeah. No, you were just picturing this pokey mountaintop in the wind. like
a North Face ad. It's like, you know what happens in North Face ads? People are cold. That's what happens in North Face ads.
Super cold and hungry.
And tired.
They've got some like shitty, super sweet, chewy thing that's supposed to be a meal. No. Go 5 feet down and there's this warm, perfect blue water waiting for you.
That's such a good tip. Thank you. It's funny because that's actually kind of what the podcast, that's how the podcast thing started, was like I had this kind of crazy long-term big vision that just sort of came to me in the beginning of the year. I'm really captivated by this vision of a world full of enlivening organizations, right? I'm like that. And I was like, okay, wow, if I dedicated like all my energy towards that end, like I know I'll never get there, but that would be sweet. Like that would be a dope path to walk down. And I'd feel good about that. Sure. And I was like, all right, well, what's the first step? And talked about a lot of different things. And I was like, well, shit, I know I'm going to already go, and I already nerd out and go on these like learning journeys anyway. And I was like, well, shit, just record it and do it out loud. And that's how the podcast idea came about. Mm-hmm. I was like, well, I'm going to do this stuff anyway. So why not just record it and share it with people? And that's kind of like my game plan right now.
And if it stopped today, it doesn't take away that today's conversation or any that came before it, we're good.
True. Very true. Very true. Wow. I love it. So I wanted to start to just wrap up here, and a couple questions that they're brief questions. Your response doesn't have to be brief. You can answer them in whatever length you want, but hopefully the question itself is fairly short, since I have a tendency to ramble sometimes. But you have such an inspiring story. Who inspired you, or continues to inspire you?
Well, I know that I'm a product of my parents, as we all are in ways. My mother always told me not to dim my star. And that's something, when we were talking about shame and success, that came up for me, because I still have to tell myself that. No, don't be too big. Don't be too much. Still gets in the way a little bit. And so that reminder is very necessary and has served me well, to know that I am my best self when I let my light shine. No apologies. And being raised in the way that I was, being raised so connected to our planet, to community, to where we come from, and really honoring this earth that holds us and feeds us and nourishes us. It's a gift. We forget that we are a piece of this. We are just a little sliver in this puzzle. That's an important thing for me to come back to. I am made of earth.
Wow. That's beautiful. Thank you. You mentioned the reminder you give yourself that your mom taught you as a little girl to not dim your star. Are there any other, whether it's practices or maybe quotes or things like that, that you lean on to keep doing your work and keep creating the environment you're creating?
New ones come up here and there, but not really. I think finding your own guiding star is really important. Having those set values to come back to. There's a return to home, and it's not home, my home state of Minnesota. It's not, it's home here. It's home inside of me, which, is sometimes challenging for me to access. I get very much in my head, and I'm working and I'm distracted, and there's so much stimulus going on, but, finding that white space where you can think. Sometimes at the studio, they joke that I should have a shower as my office because that's when all of my best ideas happen. So probably all of my formulas came to me while showering, which is really inconvenient because then I have to remember when I get out what all went into
We're going to
them.
get you. I used to have this thing. I used to have the same problem, and I swear I bought a whiteboard
for the shower.
We're gonna get you one of these.
Yep. Okay, excellent. I will expect it on my desk
all the
next
future
week.
Beneficiaries of that, all the future customers, you're welcome in advance for the brilliance that will come out of her mind and will come to your skin.
But it is true. I think that we just need to leave enough space. There's a quote, and I forget who it's by, and I'm going to butcher it anyway, so I'm not going to try, but it's about the music is in the white space. It's in the space between the notes. And there's a couple variations of that quote. And I have learned repeatedly that my magic happens in the white space. It's not where I sit on the org chart. It's not the things that I'm saying. It's not, these like structured places where you see me show up. It's everything in between. It's the air.
I love that. And so when you think about like the idea of, kind of going all the way back to the beginning of this conversation, to a few of the recurring themes that are woven throughout our conversation also are clearly just in the ethos, in the air over there, right? Ritual, magic, connection. I'm curious, what are those rituals that you have for yourself, like individually as just for yourself, and then also as a leader of a company and for your environment? What are the rituals that you lean on to enliven yourself so you can keep showing up the way you want to?
I'm working on how I do that professionally because I am challenged with it, because I do my most creative work solo and when there's white space, and the world has gotten really full around me and the white space has been very limited. And so I do need a shower in my office, probably on a recycled water system. So I'm not using the whole planet's waters to fuel my inspiration. Cleansing on a personal level really has become a ritual for me that is sacred. And there's something in the power of touch. And we forget that we can get that from ourselves. And through all of history, we've come together in community as well as solo to cleanse, to rinse with water, to wash away the day, to anoint with oils, to massage, to feel the texture of our fingertips, the warmth of our skin. That's really special, and we forget. We cleanse to remove dirt. We moisturize to prevent wrinkles. We look in the mirror to throw hate at ourselves. And I want to shift that.
Yeah. And that sort of brings me to my last question, which is, what is that shift and the change that you want to seek in the world, that you seek to make?
We deliver love. I want you to accept it.
Beautifully said. Beautifully said. Well, May, I just want to say thank you so much for just being so open and sharing your story. I'm totally inspired by everything you've created and everything you're going to create. Just listening to you and getting a chance to get to know you better. I can just, it's such a cool through line, right? I can see the little girl like pulling mud out of the river in Minnesota and taking the formations with her, with her community there. And then like seeing the through line all the way to where you are now, running this fantastic company based out of LA, living your dream is just super exciting. So thanks so much for being willing to spend some time with me and share your story. I love it. It's great.
Truly my pleasure and my honor. Thank you, Andrew.
Thanks for listening. If you enjoyed this episode, please rate and review us on iTunes. That helps us reach way more people and build this community up. For show notes, links to the resources, and everything else we discussed, please go to enliven.fm. Feel free to reach out with questions, feedback, or just to say hello by emailing connect@enliven.fm. Be sure to subscribe, and until next time, my friends, leave them better than you found them. We'll see you soon.